Jason Miller always believed loyalty mattered more than love. For 10 years, Ryan Carter had been more than a best friend. He was family. They survived college together, built careers together, spent countless nights talking about life over cheap pizza and basketball games. Ryan trusted Jason with everything, except one thing. His younger sister, Emily Carter. Ryan used to joke about it sometimes, but there was always truth behind the smile. Date anyone you want, Jason, but stay away from my sister. At the time, it sounded harmless. Easy Emily was younger than them, quiet, always buried in books during high school. Back then, Jason never looked at her twice, but people changed, and life changed with them. Friday night rain poured heavily across downtown Chicago, while Jason unlocked the door to his apartment after work. The hallway smelled like wet concrete and old coffee. Jason loosened his tie, tired from another endless day at the architecture firm. The moment he stepped inside, he heard soft music playing, then laughter. Female laughter. A smile appeared on his face immediately. Emily Carter sat comfortably on his gray couch wearing one of his oversized hoodies. Her blonde hair fell loosely around her shoulders, still slightly wet from the storm outside. A half-finished cup of tea rested beside her while she scrolled through movies on television. Jason quietly closed the door behind him. For a second, he simply stood there watching her. Sometimes he still could not believe this was real. Emily looked up and caught him staring. A teasing smile touched her lips. "You planning to stand there all night?" Jason laughed softly. "Depends." Emily raised an eyebrow. "On what?" "On whether you plan to keep stealing my hoodies?" She looked down at the oversized sleeves and grinned proudly. "You left it at my apartment last week." Jason walked toward the kitchen. "That doesn't mean it belongs to you." Emily followed him with her eyes while he started making coffee. Rain hammered against the windows, creating a peaceful sound through the apartment. For a moment, life felt normal, simple, safe. Emily crossed her legs comfortably on the couch. "You still make terrible coffee, by the way." Jason smirked without turning around. "And you still complain about everything." Emily laughed quietly. That laugh always affected him more than it should. Jason first saw Emily again 3 months earlier. After years of barely speaking, he had stopped by a bookstore after work searching for a gift for Ryan's birthday. Then suddenly he heard a familiar voice behind him, Jason Miller. When he turned around, he almost did not recognize her. Emily no longer looked like Ryan's awkward younger sister. She looked confident, beautiful. Older, her soft blue eyes carried warmth that instantly pulled him in. They spent nearly 2 hours talking inside that bookstore cafe. One accidental meeting turned into texting. Texting became dinners. Dinners slowly became something deeper, something dangerous. Jason tried fighting it at first, because Ryan trusted him, because some lines should never be crossed. But Emily made him forget every rule he promised himself to follow. Now here she was inside his apartment, acting like she belonged there. And honestly, Jason loved that feeling. Emily suddenly looked toward the window thoughtfully. "You ever think about how weird life is?" Jason poured coffee into 2 mugs, all the time. She smiled softly. "If someone told teenage me that one day I'd be sitting in your apartment stealing your clothes," Jason carried the mugs toward the couch, "I would have been terrified." Emily laughed again. "You were scared of me. I was scared of your brother." That made Emily roll her eyes dramatically. "Ryan acts like I'm still 16. Jason sat beside her, carefully handing over the coffee. He's protective. He's controlling. Jason stayed quiet because, honestly, both statements were true. Ryan loved Emily deeply. After their father walked out years ago, Ryan basically raised her himself. That responsibility changed him, made him overprotective. Especially when it came to relationships. Emily took a sip of coffee, then immediately made a disgusted face. "This is awful." Jason pretended to look offended. "You're impossible to impress," Emily smiled warmly at him. "You still try anyway." Their eyes locked for several quiet seconds. The world outside disappeared. Jason slowly leaned closer. Emily did the same. Then suddenly loud footsteps echoed from the hallway outside the apartment. Jason froze instantly. Emily's expression changed too. A familiar voice shouted from outside the door. "Jason, open up." Jason nearly spilled his coffee. Ryan Emily whispered under her breath. "Oh no." Ryan knocked again, harder this time. "Your car's downstairs. Why aren't you answering?" Jason stood quickly, panic rushing through him. Emily tried not to laugh despite the tension. "You look terrified." "I am terrified." Jason ran both hands through his hair anxiously. "This is bad." Emily stood from the couch, surprisingly calm. "We're adults, Jason. You clearly don't know your brother when he's angry." Ryan rattled the doorknob impatiently. "Jason, I know you're in there." Jason looked toward Emily helplessly. Part of him wanted to hide her in the bedroom like some teenager sneaking around. But another part of him hated that idea. Emily deserved better than secrecy. Still, Ryan finding out like this felt like disaster. Jason finally walked toward the door, taking one nervous breath. Before opening it, Ryan Carter stepped inside carrying 2 pizza boxes and wearing his usual leather jacket soaked from rain. At first, his expression looked completely normal. Then he noticed Emily standing near the couch wearing Jason's hoodie. Everything changed. Ryan stopped moving entirely. The room became silent except for the rain outside. Jason watched confusion slowly turn into disbelief across Ryan's face. Then anger, heavy, painful. Anger. Ryan blinked once, slowly. "What the hell is this, Jason?" Opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Emily crossed her arms, calmly trying to control the situation. "Relax, Ryan." Ryan looked at her sharply. "Relax." He pointed directly at Jason. "You," then toward Emily, "and you." Jason finally forced words out. "It's not what you think." Ryan laughed bitterly. "That line only works in movies." Emily stepped forward. "We didn't plan to hide this forever." Ryan stared at her like he barely recognized her. "How long has this been happening?" Jason hesitated. For 1 second too long. Ryan noticed immediately. His jaw tightened. "You lied to me." Jason shook his head quickly. "No. You absolutely lied to me. I just didn't know how to tell you." Ryan threw the pizza boxes onto the kitchen counter. "Hard enough to crush one side? You were my brother Jason." The pain in Ryan's voice hit harder than the anger. Emily moved closer to Ryan. "Stop acting like I belong to you." Ryan looked hurt now. "Not just angry, and you kept this secret too." Emily's confidence weakened slightly. Jason stepped forward carefully. "Ryan, listen to me." "No." Ryan backed away, shaking his head slowly. "You knew exactly how I felt about this." Jason answered honestly. "I tried staying away from her." Ryan laughed, coldly. Clearly, that worked great. Emily suddenly grabbed Jason's hand without hesitation. Ryan noticed immediately. That small movement somehow hurt him even more. Jason could see it in his eyes, years of friendship suddenly hanging by a thread. Ryan looked between them silently. Then his expression hardened. "If you care about our friendship at all," his voice became cold, "you'll stay away from my sister." Emily immediately spoke. "Ryan, stop deciding things for me." But Ryan ignored her completely. His attention stayed locked on Jason. Jason felt torn apart inside because he loved his best friend, but he also knew one terrifying truth. He could not walk away from Emily anymore. Not now, maybe not ever. Ryan waited for an answer. Jason stayed, silent. That silence said everything. Ryan nodded slowly, disappointment filling his face. Then without another word, he turned around and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back one final time. "You know what hurts most," Jason swallowed. Hard. Ryan's eyes looked almost broken. "I trusted you." Then he slammed the apartment door shut so hard the walls shook. Silence filled the room afterward. Heavy, painful silence. Emily slowly released Jason's hand. Rain continued falling outside. Jason leaned against the wall, exhausted, rubbing his face. Everything he feared had finally happened. Emily walked closer carefully. He'll calm down eventually. Jason looked toward the closed door. For the first time all night, uncertainty filled his chest because, deep down, he knew something important had just changed forever, and maybe there was no going back anymore. The apartment stayed painfully silent after Ryan left. Only the sound of rain against the windows filled the room. Jason Miller stood near the door, staring at the empty hallway like his best friend might suddenly walk back inside. But deep down, he knew Ryan was too angry for that. Emily Carter slowly sat back down on the couch, pulling Jason's oversized hoodie tighter around herself. The warmth from earlier was gone now. Everything felt cold, heavy, broken. Jason finally rubbed his face tiredly and walked toward the kitchen. I should have told him sooner. Emily looked toward him quietly. Probably. Jason gave a weak laugh. Thanks for the support. Emily's lips curved slightly, but the sadness remained in her eyes. Jason leaned against the counter, running both hands through his hair. For 10 years, Ryan trusted him completely, and now one secret had destroyed everything. Emily watched him carefully. You really think he'll end your friendship over this? Jason looked toward her. You didn't see his face? I did? And Emily sighed softly. My brother's dramatic. Jason shook his head slowly. No. He's hurt. That truth sat heavily between them. Ryan never trusted people easily, especially after their father abandoned the family years ago. Jason had been one of the few people Ryan truly considered family. Now even that bond felt damaged. Emily stood from the couch and walked toward Jason slowly. You didn't force me into this relationship? Jason looked down at her. I know. So stop carrying all the blame. Jason wanted to believe her, but guilt still twisted inside his chest because Ryan warned him clearly years ago. Stay away from Emily, and Jason crossed that line anyway. Emily gently touched his arm. You know what really bothers me? Jason looked at her carefully. You keep talking about Ryan's feelings. She stepped closer, but you haven't said one thing about ours. Jason froze slightly. Emily's eyes softened. Do you regret this? The question hit him harder than expected. Jason immediately shook his head. No. Emily searched his face carefully. Then stop acting like loving me was some terrible mistake. Jason stared at her silently for several seconds, because the truth terrified. Him loving Emily never felt wrong. Losing Ryan did. Jason slowly wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer. I don't regret you. Emily relaxed against him, finally breathing easier. Good. Jason rested his forehead lightly against hers. For a brief moment, the outside world disappeared again. No anger, no betrayal, just them. Then suddenly, Jason's phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter. Both immediately looked toward it, Ryan. Jason stared at the screen nervously. Emily stepped back slightly. You should answer. Jason hesitated before grabbing the phone. His chest tightened instantly. Ryan. Ryan's voice sounded colder than Jason had ever heard before. Meet me tomorrow morning. Jason swallowed hard. Ryan. Listen. Tomorrow. Then, the call disconnected immediately. Jason lowered the phone slowly. Emily crossed her arms anxiously. What did he say? He wants to meet. Emily studied his face. You think he's going to punch you? Jason actually considered it seriously. 50% chance. That made Emily laugh quietly. Despite everything, Jason smiled slightly. Hearing it, God, he loved making her laugh. Even during disasters. The next morning, gray clouds still covered Chicago. Jason barely slept more than 2 hours. Every worst case scenario played repeatedly through his mind. All night, by 8 in the morning, he parked outside Carter. Auto repair downtown Ryan's garage had belonged to his family for years. The place smelled like oil metal and coffee. Normally, Jason loved. Being there today, it felt different. Tense, Jason stepped inside quietly. Ryan stood beside a black Mustang, pretending to work underneath the hood, but Jason knew him too well. Ryan only worked on cars when stressed a wrench slammed loudly against the metal. Table nearby, Ryan never looked up. You're late. Jason checked his watch immediately. I'm 2 minutes early. Ryan shrugged coldly. Still late. Jason stayed silent. The distance between them already felt strange, unnatural. Ryan finally closed the hood aggressively and looked toward him. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. Clearly he slept badly too. Jason spoke carefully. Ryan. How long? Jason stopped talking immediately. Ryan crossed his arms. How long has this been happening? Jason answered honestly. 3 months. Ryan laughed once, bitterly. 3 months. Jason nodded slowly. Ryan looked away, shaking his head. You really hid this from me for 3 months. I didn't know how to tell you. That's because you knew I'd hate it. Jason could not deny that. Ryan stepped closer, frustration growing in his voice. You're my best friend, Jason. I know. Then why hurt? Jason looked directly into Ryan's eyes. Because I didn't choose it, Ryan scoffed angrily. That's convenient. Jason's patience finally cracked slightly. You think I planned this? Ryan stayed quiet. Jason continued honestly. I tried staying away from her at first. Ryan folded his arms tighter, but Jason sighed. Deeply, but every time we talked it became harder. Ryan stared at him silently. Jason forced himself to keep going. She makes me happy. The garage became quiet again. Ryan looked away toward the cars instead of Jason. For a moment his anger weakened. Slightly. Then he muttered quietly. She really likes you. Jason blinked, surprised. What? Ryan rubbed the back of his neck, frustrated. She talks about you differently. Jason stayed silent. Ryan laughed bitterly again. I noticed months ago. Jason frowned. You knew? I suspected. Ryan suddenly punched the metal tool cabinet beside him hard enough to shake it. The loud sound echoed across the garage. Jason stepped forward instantly. Ryan, calm down. Ryan looked furious now. No, you calm down. He pointed directly at Jason. You have any idea what happens if this goes bad? It won't. You can't promise that. Jason's jaw tightened. I would never hurt her. Ryan stared at him carefully. For the first time, the anger in his expression mixed with fear, real fear. Not for himself, for Emily. Ryan lowered his voice slightly. She's been through enough already. Jason frowned, confused. What does that mean? Ryan hesitated immediately. Jason noticed. What aren't you telling me? Before Ryan could answer, the large garage doors suddenly opened behind them. Both men turned immediately. A black luxury SUV slowly rolled inside the garage. The expensive vehicle looked completely out of place, surrounded by old engines and dirty tools. The driver's door opened smoothly. A tall man stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored dark suit. Everything about him screamed money control. Danger. Ryan's entire expression changed instantly. The anger disappeared, replaced by something colder. Hatred. Jason looked between them, confused. The man adjusted his expensive watch calmly before speaking. Ryan stepped forward aggressively. I told you never to come here again. The stranger ignored the threat completely. Instead, his eyes shifted toward Jason. A faint smile appeared on his face. So this is Jason Miller. Jason frowned immediately. How do you know my name? The man extended a hand casually. Daniel Reed. Jason ignored the handshake. Something about Daniel instantly felt wrong. Cold eyes, fake smile, predator energy hidden beneath expensive charm. Ryan moved beside Jason protectively. What do you want? Daniel looked amused by the hostility. I came to discuss Emily. The moment Emily's name left his mouth, tension exploded inside the garage. Ryan grabbed Daniel's suit collar, instantly shoving him backward against the SUV. "You stay away from her." Daniel calmly removed Ryan's hand without panic. "You're becoming emotional again." Jason stepped between them before a fight started. "What's going on?" Ryan stayed silent. But Daniel smiled slightly. "Emily used to work for my company." Jason waited. Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "Then she disappeared with something valuable," Ryan snapped. "Immediately, don't talk to him." But Jason already sensed something serious underneath this conversation. Daniel stepped closer calmly. "Your girlfriend has something that belongs to me." Jason felt his stomach tighten. "What are you talking about?" Daniel's eyes locked directly onto his. "Sensitive information." Ryan looked ready to explode again. Daniel smiled coldly. "Tell Emily. I'll be seeing her soon." Then, without another word, he turned and walked back toward the SUV. The vehicle disappeared out of the garage moments later. Silence followed immediately. Jason slowly turned toward Ryan. What the hell was that? Ryan looked exhausted suddenly, like years of stress hit him all at once. Jason stepped closer. "Ryan." Ryan finally answered quietly. "That man ruins lives." Jason's chest tightened uneasily, and Emily knows something about him. Ryan looked toward the garage entrance where the SUV disappeared. Then he muttered words that instantly changed everything. "And now because of you, he knows exactly where to find her." Jason Miller drove home through heavy Chicago traffic with one thought repeating endlessly inside his head. Who exactly was Daniel Reed Rainwater slid across the windshield while city lights blurred together outside Ryan's final words at the garage? Refused to leave his mind. He knows exactly where to find her. The fear in Ryan's voice felt real, not exaggerated, not dramatic. Real Jason tightened his grip on the steering wheel. For the first time since meeting Emily, he realized their relationship carried dangers far beyond friendship problems. Something serious was happening, and somehow Emily stood directly in the middle of it. 40 minutes later, Jason finally entered his apartment building. His heartbeat quickened slightly while walking toward. His door part of him feared what else he might discover tonight. The moment he stepped inside, he found Emily sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling nervously through her phone. She looked up immediately. The second she saw his expression, her face changed. "You saw Daniel?" Jason slowly closed the apartment door behind him. "You knew he was looking for you." Emily stood carefully from the couch. Jason noticed tension instantly spread across her body. "He came to Ryan's garage, didn't he?" Jason nodded once. "He said you stole something from him." Emily looked away quietly. That silence answered everything. Jason stepped closer. "Emily, tell me the truth." She folded her arms tightly around herself. "It's complicated." Jason laughed softly without humor. "Complicated stopped existing the moment some rich psychopath started hunting you." Emily rubbed her forehead tiredly. "I was hoping you'd never get dragged into this." Jason stared at her in disbelief. "You think I'm walking away now?" Emily's eyes softened slightly. Hearing that, still fear remained there too. Jason sat slowly on the couch, trying to stay calm. Start from the beginning. Emily remained standing for several quiet seconds. Then finally, she sighed and sat beside him. 3 years earlier, Emily worked for Reed Financial Group downtown. At first, it seemed like a dream job. High salary, luxury office. Important clients. Daniel Reed built one of the fastest-growing investment companies in Chicago, too. The public, he looked brilliant, successful, untouchable. But behind closed doors, Emily slowly noticed strange transactions hidden inside company records. Money moved through fake charities, shell companies, political donations, large amounts disappearing without explanation. At first, she convinced herself it was nothing, accounting mistakes maybe, but the deeper she looked, the worse it became. Jason listened carefully without interrupting. Emily continued quietly. One night, Daniel asked me to stay late. Her fingers tightened together nervously. I accidentally saw files connected to offshore accounts. Jason frowned, and names. Emily looked directly into his eyes. Now, important names? Jason immediately understood. Politicians, businessmen powerful. People dangerous enough to protect secrets at any cost. Emily swallowed hard before continuing. When Daniel realized I knew too much, everything changed. Jason noticed fear return across her face. Just remembering it, he became controlling. He watched everything I did. One day I overheard him threatening another employee. Jason's chest tightened. What happened to that employee? Emily hesitated, then quietly answered. He disappeared. Silence filled the apartment immediately. Jason felt cold, suddenly. Emily continued softly. That's when I copied the files. Jason stared at her. You stole evidence? Emily nodded. I planned to go directly to federal investigators. And did you? Yes. But before the investigation officially started, someone leaked information. Jason frowned. Daniel found out. Emily nodded again. He destroyed records before authorities could seize them. Jason slowly understood the problem now. Without complete evidence, Daniel escaped. Serious charges, and he believed Emily still possessed the missing files. Jason leaned back against the couch, processing everything. So Ryan knew all this. Emily sighed. Only parts of it. Why didn't you tell him everything? Because Ryan already blames himself for not protecting me enough. Jason suddenly remembered Ryan's constant overprotectiveness. Now it made more sense. This was not just brotherly behavior. Ryan genuinely feared losing her. Emily quietly stood and walked toward her bedroom. Jason watched, silently confused. A moment later, she returned, holding a small silver flash drive tightly in her hand. The room suddenly felt smaller. The second Jason saw it, Emily looked down at the drive carefully. This is why Daniel keeps coming back. Jason stared at the tiny object that contains everything. Copies of financial records, account numbers, payments, names. Jason slowly exhaled. One tiny flash drive held enough information to destroy powerful people or get someone killed. Emily sat beside him again, holding it tightly. I should have destroyed it years ago. Jason immediately shook his head. No, Emily looked toward him. Surprised, Jason continued. If something happens, you need protection. Emily gave a weak smile. That's exactly why I kept it. Jason suddenly noticed her hands trembling slightly. He gently took the flash drive from her, placing it safely on the table. Then he held her hands carefully between his own. You're shaking. Emily laughed softly. Trying to hide it. I'm fine. No, you're not. For the first time since meeting her, Jason saw genuine fear underneath Emily's calm personality, and that terrified him more than Daniel himself. Emily looked toward the apartment. Windows uneasily. Someone broke into my apartment last week. Jason froze immediately. What? Her voice lowered quietly. They didn't steal anything. They only searched. Jason's stomach dropped. You think Daniel sent them? Emily nodded slowly. I'm sure of it. Jason stood instantly, anger rushing through him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew exactly how you'd react. Jason paced across the apartment, frustrated. This is serious, Emily. I know. No, you don't. Emily stood too now, matching his intensity. I've been living with this fear for 3 years, Jason. The room fell silent again. Jason realized she was right, while he only discovered this nightmare today. Emily carried it alone for years. That thought hurt him deeply. Jason moved back toward her slower this time. I'm sorry. Emily's expression softened immediately. I didn't want your life becoming dangerous because of me. Jason gently touched her face. You really think I care about that right now? Emily looked emotional. Suddenly, Jason pulled her into his arms without hesitation. For several quiet seconds, she simply held on to him tightly, like she finally allowed herself to feel exhausted. Jason rested his chin. Against her hair, protectively, we'll figure this out. Emily closed her eyes against his chest. You sound confident. I'm trying. That made her smile slightly. Then suddenly her phone buzzed loudly on the coffee table. Both immediately looked toward it unknown. Number Emily's face lost color instantly. Jason picked up the phone carefully. A text message appeared on screen. I know where you are. Jason felt ice spread through his chest. Another message arrived seconds later. You should have given me the drive years ago. Emily stepped backward, terrified. Jason immediately grabbed his own phone. I'm calling the police. Emily stopped him quickly. No. Jason looked at her in disbelief. He's threatening you. And if police get involved, Daniel disappears again before they find anything. Jason clenched his jaw angrily. So what? We just wait for him to show up. Before Emily could answer, another sound interrupted them, a soft, metallic noise near the apartment door. Both instantly froze. Jason slowly looked toward the entrance. Someone was outside. The doorknob moved slightly. Emily whispered quietly, "Oh my God." Jason quickly turned off the living room lights. Darkness filled the apartment immediately. Another sound came from outside the door, then silence. Jason's heartbeat pounded loudly in his ears while he stepped protectively in front of Emily. Whoever stood outside remained completely still now, like they knew exactly where Emily was hiding. Then suddenly, a deep male voice spoke quietly through the door. Emily. Jason felt Emily grab his arm tightly behind him because both of them recognized the voice instantly. Daniel Reed had found them. Jason Miller stood completely still in the darkness of the apartment while Daniel Reed's voice echoed from the hallway outside Emily. The sound alone sent fear crawling through the room. Emily Carter grabbed Jason's arm tightly behind him. Her breathing became uneven. Jason could feel her shaking. The apartment lights stayed off while rain tapped softly against the windows. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Daniel's voice came again, calm and controlled. We need to talk. Jason slowly stepped closer to the door without making noise. Every instinct inside him screamed that something was wrong. Dangerously wrong. Emily whispered quietly behind him. Don't answer. Jason looked back at her carefully. Fear filled her eyes completely now. Not panic. Not nervousness. Real fear. The kind created by someone who truly understood how dangerous a man could be. Jason lowered his voice. Call Ryan. Emily nodded quickly, grabbing her phone with trembling hands. Another knock hit the door. Slow patient. Almost confident, Daniel spoke again. You know this ends badly if you keep hiding from me. Jason's jaw tightened. Part of him wanted to rip open the door and punch Daniel directly in the face. But another part understood that reckless anger would only make things worse. Emily suddenly whispered, He's not alone. Jason frowned immediately. How do you know? He never comes alone. Jason carefully moved toward the apartment window and slightly opened the blinds. A black SUV sat parked across the street below. Two large men stood near it watching the building entrance. Jason's stomach tightened instantly. Emily had been telling the truth all along. This was not paranoia. Daniel Reed was hunting her. Jason moved away from the window quickly. Ryan's coming. Emily looked at her phone anxiously. He's 5 minutes away. Jason nodded. Once. 5 minutes suddenly sounded very long. Another loud knock shook the apartment door. This time, Daniel's patience sounded thinner. Emily. We both know you still have the drive. Jason saw Emily freeze at those words. Then Daniel continued calmly. You should understand something. I'm trying to help you. Jason nearly laughed at the insanity of that statement. Help her. The man had people following her, threatening her, breaking into her apartment. Emily's voice finally rose from behind Jason. "Go away, Daniel." Silence answered her for several seconds. Then Daniel spoke again. "You really trust Jason Miller to protect you?" Jason's eyes narrowed immediately. "How much does he know about you?" Emily looked shaken now. Daniel continued speaking through the door like poison, slowly spreading. "Did you tell him what happens to people who stay close to you?" Jason turned toward Emily, confused. "What does he mean?" Emily looked away immediately. That reaction alone unsettled him. Daniel laughed softly outside. "Interesting. Maybe she hasn't told you everything after all." Jason's chest tightened uneasily. Emily stepped toward him quickly. "Don't listen to him." But before Jason could respond, another voice suddenly echoed from the hallway. "Step away! From the door!" Ryan relief instantly hit Jason. Then loud crashing sounds exploded outside. Shouting followed immediately. Jason rushed toward the peephole. Ryan was fighting one of Daniel's men directly in the hallway. The second bodyguard slammed Ryan against the wall hard, but Ryan punched him back instantly. Chaos erupted outside the apartment. Daniel stepped backward calmly, watching the violence like it entertained him. Jason unlocked the door immediately, the moment he stepped outside. He grabbed one of the bodyguards and slammed him against the hallway railing. Ryan landed another hard punch against the second man. Everything happened fast. Fists, shouting, glass breaking somewhere downstairs. Daniel calmly adjusted his suit during the fight, almost smiling. Then suddenly he pulled something from inside his jacket. A gun. Everything stopped instantly. Ryan froze, breathing heavily. Jason moved directly in front of Emily without thinking. Daniel held the weapon casually but confidently. His voice remained calm. "Now, we can finally speak like adults." The hallway became silent except for distant thunder outside. Emily stared at the gun. Terrified, Ryan slowly lifted his hand slightly. "Daniel, don't do this." Daniel ignored him completely. His eyes stayed locked on Emily. "Give me the drive." Emily's voice shook slightly. "No." Daniel sighed, almost disappointed. "You continue making terrible decisions." Jason's heart pounded violently inside his chest. He carefully watched Daniel's movements, searching for any opening. But Daniel looked perfectly steady, like a man who already believed he won. Then Emily suddenly spoke again. "You're scared?" Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Emily stepped closer, despite Jason trying to stop her. "You wouldn't be chasing me this hard unless those files could destroy you." For the first time, Daniel's calm mask cracked slightly. Anger flashed across his face. "You have no idea what you're involved in." Emily's voice became stronger now. "I know exactly what you are." Daniel raised the gun slightly higher. Ryan instantly moved protectively, too. "Emily, stop talking." But Emily ignored him completely. "You threatened innocent people. You destroyed lives. You murdered." "Enough." Daniel shouted the words so violently, even Jason flinched. Silence crashed back over the hallway. Daniel looked unstable now, dangerously unstable. Jason slowly shifted, his weight preparing himself. Then suddenly police sirens echoed faintly outside the building. Daniel heard them too. His expression changed instantly. Ryan smirked slightly through bloody lips. "Looks like somebody called the cops." Daniel looked furious now. One of his bodyguards groaned while struggling to stand again. The sirens grew louder rapidly. Daniel stepped backward toward the elevator, still holding the gun. But before he could move further, Ryan suddenly lunged at him. Everything exploded again. The gun fired once into the ceiling. Emily screamed. Jason tackled Daniel sideways into the hallway wall. The weapon slid across the floor. One of the bodyguards tried grabbing it first, but Jason kicked the gun away hard. Ryan punched Daniel repeatedly, while years of anger poured out through every hit. Daniel fought back wildly, now losing his calm completely. Then the elevator doors opened suddenly. Police officers stormed into the hallway with weapons raised. "Nobody move." The fight instantly stopped. Daniel tried stepping away, but officers grabbed him immediately, forcing his hands behind his back. One officer secured the gun while another restrained the bodyguards. Red and blue lights flashed through the hallway. Windows. Jason stood breathing heavily, trying to process everything that just happened. Emily rushed toward Ryan immediately. Blood covered the side of his face, but he was alive. Ryan looked toward her, exhausted. "You okay?" Emily nodded emotionally, then suddenly hugged him tightly. Ryan wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. For several seconds, neither spoke. Jason watched quietly, feeling relief finally crash over him. One police officer approached Daniel while placing handcuffs around his wrists. Daniel looked toward Emily with pure hatred. "This isn't over." Emily stared directly back at him. "Yes, it is." Daniel was escorted toward the elevator moments later, still glaring at all three of them. The second the doors closed, silence filled the hallway again. Ryan leaned against the wall. Exhausted, Jason picked up the silver flash drive from the floor carefully. Such a tiny object, yet it nearly destroyed all of them. Ryan noticed Jason holding it. "You still have that thing." Emily wiped tears from her face slowly. "It's over now." Ryan looked toward her seriously. "No. It's finally starting." Jason frowned. "What does that mean?" Ryan exchanged a look with Emily. Something passed silently between them, something. Jason immediately noticed. Then Ryan sighed heavily before speaking words that made Jason's stomach tighten again. "Because Daniel Reed isn't the most dangerous person connected to those files." The police finally left the apartment building just after 3 in the morning. Rain still covered the streets of Chicago, while flashing red and blue lights disappeared into the distance. Inside Jason Miller's apartment, nobody spoke for several long minutes. The exhaustion hit all three of them at once. Ryan Carter sat at the kitchen table holding an ice pack against his bruised face. Emily Carter stood near the window, silently staring down at the empty street below. Jason cleaned blood from his knuckles inside the sink, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Everything that happened tonight still felt unreal. Gunshots. Police Daniel Reed arrested in handcuffs, and now Ryan's final warning echoed endlessly inside Jason's head. "Daniel, Reed isn't the most dangerous person connected to those files." Jason finally turned around slowly. "What exactly does that mean?" Ryan lowered the ice pack from his face carefully. His expression looked serious again. He wasn't working. Alone. Emily closed her eyes briefly, like she already knew where this conversation was going. Jason walked toward the table. "Then who?" Ryan hesitated. That hesitation alone worried Jason immediately. Finally, Ryan spoke quietly. "Councilman Victor Hayes." Jason frowned, trying to recognize the name. Then suddenly it hit him. Victor Hayes was one of the most powerful politicians in Chicago. Television interviews, charity events, campaign, posters everywhere. People trusted him. Jason looked, stunned. "You're saying a city councilman was involved?" Ryan nodded slowly. Emily finally turned away from the window. "He funded Daniel's fake charities." Jason stared at her. "You knew." Emily crossed her arms tightly. "I suspected." Ryan sighed heavily. "The files contain financial transfers connected directly to Hayes." Jason rubbed both hands over his face, exhausted. "This just keeps getting worse." Emily walked toward the kitchen slowly. That's why Daniel wanted the drive so badly. Jason looked at the silver flash drive resting on the table. One tiny object carried enough evidence to destroy rich businessmen, politicians, and possibly entire careers, or get all of them killed. Ryan leaned forward seriously. "We need to give it directly to federal investigators before Hayes hears Daniel got arrested." Jason nodded immediately. Then we do it tomorrow morning. But Emily looked uncertain. Jason noticed instantly what? Emily hesitated before answering, "There's something else." Ryan looked toward her sharply. "Emily." She avoided his eyes. Jason's stomach tightened again. "What else haven't you told us?" Emily swallowed nervously. 3 years ago, before I copied the files. Daniel made me sign something. Ryan already looked angry now. "What kind of thing?" Emily's voice lowered quietly. "A confidentiality agreement." Jason frowned, confused. "That's normal for companies." Emily shook her head. Slowly. "No." This one was different. Jason waited carefully. Then Emily finally forced the truth out. It included a false confession. Silence filled the apartment instantly. Ryan stood up immediately. "What?" Emily looked ashamed. Suddenly, "Daniel forced me to sign papers admitting I stole money from the company." Jason stared at her in disbelief. "He blackmailed you." Emily nodded slowly. "He said if I refused, he'd destroy Ryan's garage business with fake debt. Claims." Ryan looked furious. "You should have told me." Emily's eyes filled with emotion. "I was trying to protect you." Ryan turned away, frustrated. Running both hands through his hair, Jason stepped closer to Emily carefully. "So Daniel could frame you any time he wanted." Emily nodded again. "And if Hayes still has those documents?" Jason finished the thought quietly. "They could blame everything on you." The apartment suddenly felt cold again, even with Daniel arrested. The nightmare clearly was not over. Ryan grabbed his jacket quickly. "We're not waiting until morning." Jason looked at him immediately. "What are you doing?" "Calling my FBI contact now." Emily blinked, surprised. "You know someone in the FBI?" Ryan smirked slightly despite his bruises. "Turns out being paranoid sometimes helps." Jason almost laughed from exhaustion. Ryan pulled out his phone and walked toward the balcony, making the call privately. Emily sat quietly at the table, looking emotionally drained. Jason sat beside her gently. "You okay?" She laughed softly without humor. "Not even close." Jason carefully took her hand. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Emily whispered quietly, "You should leave, before this destroys your life, too." Jason looked at her immediately. "Don't start that again." "I'm serious, Jason." Her eyes looked genuinely terrified now. "People connected to this are dangerous." Jason squeezed her hand tighter. "You think I care?" "I care." Jason moved closer toward her. "I'm not leaving you." Emily looked down emotionally. "You don't understand how badly I wanted normal life again." Jason gently lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "We'll get it back." Emily stared at him silently, then softly asked the question that mattered most. "Even after all this?" Jason answered without hesitation. "Especially after all this." Tears filled her eyes instantly. Jason pulled her into his arms while she quietly cried against his chest. For the first time since this nightmare started, Emily finally allowed herself to break completely, not from weakness, from exhaustion. Years of fear, pressure, and loneliness finally crashing. Down at once, Jason held her tightly through all of it, and silently promised himself he would never let anyone hurt her again. An hour later, Ryan returned inside from the balcony, looking serious. "They're sending agents tomorrow morning." Jason nodded, relieved. "Good." Ryan looked toward Emily carefully. "You'll need witness protection after this." Emily immediately shook her head. "No." Ryan frowned. "Emily, be realistic. I'm tired of running." Jason understood both sides. But Ryan was right. Daniel Reed may be arrested, yet Victor Hayes still remained free, and powerful people rarely surrendered quietly. Ryan sat back down heavily. there's something else you both should know. Jason prepared himself for more bad news. Ryan looked directly toward him. The reason Daniel trusted Hayes so much. They're related? Jason blinked slowly. What? Ryan nodded. Hayes is Daniel's uncle. Emily looked shocked, too. You never told me that. I only confirmed it tonight. Jason leaned back, speechless. Now everything made more sense. Political protection, missing evidence, destroyed investigations. Daniel never operated alone. He never needed to powerful family connections kept him untouchable, at least until now. The next morning, federal agents arrived just after sunrise. 2 black SUVs parked outside Jason's building. Agent Rebecca Collins introduced herself calmly while reviewing the flash drive carefully. Her expression changed almost. Immediately, once she saw the files, "This is bigger than we expected?" Ryan folded his arms. "Can you protect her?" Rebecca nodded seriously. "We'll do everything possible." Emily looked nervous, but determined now. For the next 2 hours, Emily answered questions while agents copied evidence from the flash drive. Jason stayed beside her the entire time, never once letting go of her hand. Finally, Rebecca closed her folder. Victor Hayes will be arrested today. Jason exhaled slowly, feeling tension finally begin leaving his chest. Years of fear were finally ending. Before leaving, Rebecca looked toward Emily carefully. "You did the right thing?" Emily smiled weakly. "It only took 3 years." Later that evening, the apartment finally felt peaceful again. Sunlight faded slowly outside, while television news channels exploded with headlines. Councilman Victor Hayes arrested for corruption. Conspiracy and money laundering, Daniel Reed officially charged with multiple federal crimes. Ryan stood near the kitchen watching the news quietly. Then he looked toward Jason sitting beside Emily on the couch. For several seconds, Ryan said nothing. Then finally, he sighed dramatically. "I still don't approve of this relationship." Emily rolled her eyes immediately. "Oh my God, Ryan!" Jason laughed softly. Ryan pointed directly at him. "But if you hurt her," Jason smirked slightly, "you'll bury me somewhere nobody finds me." Ryan blinked, surprised. "Exactly." Emily laughed for the first time in days. Real laughter. Warm laughter. The kind Jason desperately missed hearing. Ryan shook his head while grabbing leftover pizza from the kitchen. "I hate that you already know my speeches." Jason smiled, looking toward Emily. "Your brother's predictable," Ryan muttered while walking away. "I liked life better before you two became a couple." Emily rested her head gently against Jason's shoulder. Outside, the storm clouds finally disappeared over Chicago. For the first time in years, Emily Carter no longer looked afraid. And for the first time since Ryan walked into that apartment, Jason realized maybe they actually survived everything together.